So here's this thing called polyamory. And it was like the heavens opened and the angels sang. It was like, oh my God, this explains. Like, I had only been able to date for like 3 weeks or so at a time previous to that. And then I always felt like I was on a really short leash because, especially being, pansexual, being attracted to people kind of regardless of gender, operating within a monogamous framework is like, I can't talk to anyone because I just naturally flirt. So it's like, oh, like my world shrinks to just my partner, and that's not healthy. Or I have to like really micromanage and filter and like second guess every interaction I'm having with someone as to whether or not they're going to think I'm flirting versus whether or not my partner is going to think I'm flirting.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from all over the world to hear their personal journeys of self-discovery through the lenses of love, sex, and relationships.
Our mission is to show people that they're not alone and to inspire them to embrace their true selves so that together we can open minds and live authentically without shame.
We believe everyone's story is powerful and beautiful, yet it's important to remember that everyone does life a little bit differently and that the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we aren't doctors. Please consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 417. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have a wonderful conversation with Ashton. She reached out to us wanting to share her story navigating non-monogamy for the last 15 years while living in a rural town and also being heavily involved in her church community. As you'll see, it's been quite the journey.
It's definitely been quite the journey, and just a huge thank you to Ashton for reaching out to us and offering to share your story and for coming on to make it happen. A quick reminder to everyone that all of the resources that Ashton mentions in today's episode are in the podcast show notes, which you can find over on our website at normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the podcast tab, and there you'll see links for this episode and all of our previous episodes. And without further ado, we're going to jump right into the interview with Ashton for anybody who is a premium subscriber. And for the rest of you, we've actually got some really exciting big announcements today.
We do. First up, if you're not familiar with the premium subscription, it's a way to skip these announcements up front, but don't worry, you still get important dates of upcoming events in the outro. To sign up for the premium subscription, go over to our website, again, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, scroll down the homepage, and you can sign up right there for only $4 a month. And just a quick, exciting thing, we're adding some cool things to the premium subscription.
Some new features
in January.
New features coming soon.
Next
up, our next virtual speed friending event is coming up on November 21st. If you're not familiar with our virtual speed friendings, these are a great way to meet incredible people from all around the world in a low pressure and fun environment. We bring people together in Zoom. We do quick introductions in the main room, and then we ask a fun, thought-provoking question, send you off to a breakout room with a couple of other people. You talk about the question for 6 or 7 minutes, then we scramble the rooms, ask a new question, and we do that over and over for about 2 hours. We've been running these events for years, and we're super excited to be back, and we would love to have you come join us. You can find out more information over on our website. Either click on the events tab or the banner at the top. You'll find it, I promise.
And just a quick reminder that these are open to anyone. You just must be open-minded and respectful.
So we would love to see you November 21st. Sign up now.
Next up, we have a really exciting announcement. For the last 10 months or so, we've been planning our biggest in-person event that we've ever hosted, and tickets just went on sale to the public. We've hosted lots of in-person retreats and events in the past, but most of them were for our paid community. This one is open to the public, and we would love to have you come join us.
We're also super excited because we're not just hosting this one by ourselves. We're collaborating with Emily, Deacon, and Jace from the Multi-Amory podcast, as well as a friend of ours, Gary from Breakthrough Play, who is a strategic play consultant that works with companies to strengthen their teams through games and play.
We're calling this event Relationship Recess, and it's an opportunity for you to come nourish your relationships, whether it's with a partner, partners, friendships, family, or the most important relationship we have, the one with ourselves, all through the power of play.
Relationship Recess is next May 1st to the 3rd, 2026, and is happening just outside Orlando, Florida. You can find a short launch video linked in the show notes below or on our website under the Relationship Recess tab. Or you can go back on Monday. You'll notice we have a special announcement episode that came out where we just have the audio from that announcement, that 3-minute announcement video. So you can listen there as well if you want to go check it out right now, because you're driving and you can't get to a computer and you just can't wait. So you can find out more information over on our website. One more time, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the Relationship Recess tab. You'll find all of the information there, and you can get your tickets now. And we highly suggest you do, because the price goes up on January 1st. So get them now.
Yes, come and join us. Next up, we also wanted to tell you all about our community. We lead a community full of over 300 people socializing and supporting each other every single day. We host the community on a platform called Mighty Networks. We have monthly community support Zoom calls, monthly virtual workshops, and in-person events all as well, all for less than $8 a month. Our next monthly workshop is called How to Choose a Pleasure-Based Life with Crystal Baldwin, coming up November 13th, 2025. If you're listening to this and you're like, darn it, I missed it, don't worry, you can come and join the community and access recordings of all of our workshops for the past year.
And you can see a list of all of these workshops over on our website as well. There's a tab there for the workshops. You'll see them there. And just one quick clarification I wanted to do, because we just threw a lot at you. We've got 3 exciting things happening. One of them is our virtual speed friending coming up November 21st. That's open to the public. That's open to anybody. We've also got Relationship Recess. That's an in-person event, May 1st to the 3rd, 2026. That's also open to the public, so you can come join us there. And then we have our virtual community, which is a private community, which you can join for $8 a month. You don't need to be part of our community to join either the virtual speed friending or Relationship Recess. But there will be a lot of our community members at those events, so you get a chance to meet them.
Yes. And as always, if you have any questions about any of that, please reach out to us, send us an email, and we would love to hear from you.
The last thing we want to tell you all about is our favorite way to get tested for STIs, because we're the type of people who have a favorite way.
Yes.
And that way is stdcheck.com. That one more time, slightly slower, stdcheck.com. You can find links over on the resources tab of our website. The links there will save you $10, bringing the cost of a 10-panel test down to only $129. And using those links also helps support the podcast. So thank you very much for doing that. This is the service that Emma and I have been using for years. We absolutely love it, or we wouldn't be telling you about it. And based on the number of you who are using it, you also love it. So please check it out if you're looking for a great, discreet, and simple way to get tested without having to get in to see your doctor, which, again, highly recommend getting in to see your doctor. But if you're just looking to get a test and you don't want to go through that whole rigmarole, stdcheck.com is a great way to do it. Again, links are in the show notes or on the resources tab of our website to save you $10.
And finally, a reminder to reach out to us, send us a voicemail or email over on the Contact Us page of our website. Again, if you have any questions about anything that we've shared, or if you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, send us a message and let us know. We would love to hear from you. You don't have to have a platform. You just have to be you. Come and join us on the podcast too.
And with that, we're going to jump into the interview with Ashton.
Let's go.
Well, welcome to the podcast this morning, Ashton. We're excited to chat. We're excited to get to know you better. We actually don't know very much about you at all, so we're excited to get to know you completely today. So welcome to the podcast.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're excited.
We'd love for you to start by introducing yourself.
Yeah, my name is Ashton Shepherd. I'm in my 40s, so these days I feel as though it's practically qualifying me as a sage elder in the poly community. I am, and I'll shift between poly and ENM. Like, technically, I look probably a little bit more ENM, but since I identified as really solidly poly for like 15 years, so it's kind of that's where I'll, it's old habits die hard, whatever.
Yeah.
I live in Fargo, North Dakota. I am a North Dakota native. I grew up on the western side of the state, which is the wild, wild west. Like, it is very red. There are lots of churches and bars. It was a decent sized town, but like, woof. I always, as soon as I was conscious, it was like, I do not fit in here. This land is not my people. And like, all of my friends basically emigrated and have established elsewhere. One or two are back for like family reasons and stuff, but
it's one of those towns you leave when you can.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
We pretty much all ran as far and as fast as we could. And I like to joke that we were all, fumbling around in the closet together because we weren't out to each other either. We all just flocked to like the one gay kid who was out at school. And it was, and then we all came out to each other in college and we're just like, man, this would have been so much better if we had had this conversation 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
One big part of my story has ended up being church. I'm getting back to being active in my church, which has been an interesting area of growth for reasons I'm sure we'll get into in the course of our conversation here. I'm neurospicy, probably ADHD. I don't have a formal diagnosis of autism, but most of the folks in the know are like, oh, yes, definitely.
Hmm.
I historically identified as like, in high school, it was bisexual because that's what I knew, and it was the late 90s. Then I transitioned more to queer and pansexual in college. That's only changed really recently. It's a little bit more heteroflexible, I think, at this point in my life, although kind of an expansive version of that because I do have like half a dozen people in my network or who have been in my sphere of partners in my
Yeah.
constellation or whatever. I have about half a dozen who are either trans, gender nonconforming, non-binary, etc. So it's like, it's not, I mostly like guys and I play with women once in a while. It's a little bit more gender expansive than that, but
Yeah.
I feel as though there might be other relevant things to say in there, but
Well, we'll figure them out
I'll
as
say they
along the
can
way.
come in throughout the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, I one curiosity that maybe just to kick us off, I'm curious that for you, the difference between ethical non-monogamy or E&M and polyamory. Just for you as we're talking through this, I'm curious what for you those differences are and what that has maybe looked like high level. And then of course we'll dig into the details.
yeah, definitely. I feel as though my understanding of it shifted a fair bit when I read Polysecure by Jessica Fern.
Jessica
Jessica.
Fern. Yep.
Thank you. And she did a really good job of, kind of the two axes of like whether it's more emotional versus sexual openness. And then I want to say the vertical isn't coming to my brain right now, but it doesn't matter a whole lot for this one. It's kind of that issue of like polyamory, just by the nature of the meaning of the word, feels very like, oh, it's only about loving relationships. Like, if we're not on track to be dating, significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend kind of terms,
Mhm.
then that's not part of what's in my wheelhouse. And I don't like being put in a box,
Yep.
basically.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
um, I am a very sexual person. It's kind of hilarious. I figured out like a couple of years ago the number of friends whom I have not fallen into bed with is far shorter than the list of those with whom I have. And like half of them are gay men. You know what I mean? It's just like they're disqualified by virtue of like their whom they're attracted to and whatever. It's just like, oh, I basically like I give back rubs as like signs of friendship, you know what I mean? Like there's kind of a running joke that, like hand jobs and handshakes are, pretty close to the
This-
thing. So, it's like I am very generous with my sexuality. So, and that is a big part of what sent me into polyamory. And so it's like, well, if that's more where I'm at, ethical non-monogamy is a little bit better term as far as kind of defining that.
Because some of the connections feel a little less or more casual than
Yeah.
maybe poly relationships.
Yeah.
Like it, yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's a way to say it, casual as opposed to romantic. It
Yeah.
feels weird because it's just like I have some of my friends use the term partner and they mean it very broadly, like anyone who's really in my network, whether it's date mates or lover friends or
Mhm.
significant other anchor partner kind of people. Like it's kind of all of the above. I prefer to keep that more for that significant anchor partner, pretty established. I have a tendency to say lover friends fairly often for the squad of people whom,
Mhm.
you know, varsity cuddling is amid our menu of activities.
Yeah.
And I I just prefer letting most relationships kind of seek their natural level and not
Yeah.
deciding what our path is before we really are on it.
Yeah.
Which sounds like an RA thing, but I don't think I'm RA, which we'll end up getting into, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll go back in time here in just a second. I just wanna say I feel like this place you're in right now, and maybe it sounds like has been for a while, is like the line between a friend and quote unquote more than a friend, it's quite blurry, and that the things that you consider to be activities you would do with a friend are maybe different than what a lot of people would say. Because I think this is something we've talked a little bit about lately, just Emma and I, is if your definition of friendship involves hand jobs, but most people look at a hand job and are like, that's just for like my wife or my husband or my spouse, then I can like it can mess with people's heads. But I think we all get to define, well, what are the things that make a friendship? And
Right.
and somewhere along the way, hand jobs got lumped in with the other categories, but we get to define that.
Right. I know I've been having this conversation with one of my newer lover friends, I guess we'll call him, where that sex and romance are very connected for him, and they're not for me. Like, I definitely it's I suppose, the Venn diagram, like, if a relationship is romantic for me, I definitely want it to also include sexual intimacy, but I also include lots of different it's like I appreciate the relationship smorgasbord menu because I feel as though it is a really helpful tool and visual as far as like, okay, what do you want out of us? What do I want out of us? Or what do I see working
Mhm.
between the two of us, at least for right now? And kind of trying to be on the same page about that. And sometimes it's a matter of certain activities need to be avoided
Mhm.
for their sake, just because of the whole I might catch feels thing. I haven't had that issue for, like, 10 years, and I'm not sure why that is. Maybe just because I have engaged in a fair bit of, we'll say, non-romantic sexual activity. I hate to say casual because one
Yeah.
of my one of my partners, I will call him a partner, Chris. He is like, he's my emergency contact for most things. We've known each other for, like, 15 years almost, maybe, like, 13. We had dated several years ago, and I had feelings for him at that time, and there was that differential, that kind of dynamic, that imbalance,
Mhm.
asymmetry is probably the best word, of, what feelings I had for him versus what feelings he had for me, and I've been on the other side of that equation too, so I try to just discuss it and have some compassion and allow people to make their own decisions as far as what's going to be good for them and healthy and enjoyable versus what could ultimately be damaging.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah. No, I love that you draw that distinction. And again, this is something Emma and I were just talking about the other night on a walk, is the sort of, you said like it's not necessarily casual. And I think that's a really important thing to call out, right? That some of these connections, they are very committed. They happen, regularly, and there is deep care and deep friendship, but that maybe doesn't mean that there is romance or romantic feelings or a drive to create more, but that it's like, no, we show up every week and we do these things and we have a great time, and we're very friendly and loving towards each other, but that's
mhm,
different than we're in a romantic partnership. And I
right.
think it's a really nuanced thing to sort of pull apart at times.
Oh yeah, definitely. And maybe call it call it the tism or what, but I have been a little bit on a quest for like 10 years. Like, what is romance? Like, what counts as romantic? Like, I'm in an interesting space now because I'm single for the first time in like 15 years. And so I've been like, and yet, not gonna lie, I have kind of a harem of lover friends right now. So it's that whole, what am I missing from a romantic relationship? Like, yes, there's that nesting partnership, cohabitating side, like, that's kind of a subcategory, but, like, what are those activities that, like, only really come up in a more romantic relationship? Or, what characterizes a more romantic relationship?
Yep.
What's the difference between hanging out and going out to dinner with a friend versus, like, a dinner date?
Yeah.
Things like
Yeah.
that are a little bit, feel a little ambiguous and intangible to me, but at the same time, like, there is value in it. Like, I do want that in my life, and so it's like, "Okay, what exactly does that mean? What do I want that to look like?" And I've done some writing about it recently, and it's been helpful, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's good that it's been helpful to untangle, like to write about, because I think, I mean, labels and we're naturally conditioned, I think, as humans to like put a label on something and feel and figure out exactly where this fits and how this fits. And at the end of the day, we actually don't have to do that.
Mhm.
But that's really difficult to pull ourselves away from.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That definitely has been a major issue, and part of why I'm like, I don't think I would actually qualify as relationship anarchist, and I mean, I can have some of those ideals and some of those, maybe ways of being in relationship and learn some things from that mindset, from that philosophy, but, like, I benefit from labels. I Words matter to me. I am, kind of a casual linguist. I like, words are very important to me. So I while they can be problematic, like, they don't mean the same thing to everyone who's using them, like partner and love, and some of these things can be very wibbly wobbly, but I it just it's at least a starting point, and when you suspect there's some disconnect or lack of clarity, it it just means we need to hash it out a little bit more and engage
Yeah.
in some good, direct, compassionate communication.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to maybe understand when did you start exploring relationships in this way, or has this always been how you've kind
Yeah,
of
you kind of referred to conversations you wish you had with friends in high school, and
Mhm,
love to go
mhm.
back in time.
Yeah. It's so funny. In high school, I was so single-mindedly focused on escaping that I was very like, I am going to go to college. I am going to, get a qualification so I have freedom. Autonomy has been a really big, it's one of my values. Sometimes people kind of overblow it, but it is definitely pretty important to me. And I basically didn't date in high school. I didn't have my first kiss until I was 18. I didn't have sex well, I didn't have sex voluntarily until I was, like, 21, 22, maybe. So it was very focused on, like, basically, just getting myself established to be able to function as an adult.
And yeah, get out, like get on your 2 feet.
Yes. I had a couple of very, serious crushes in high school, which is where I got my back rub skills. I had no social skills, but the long trips to, band competitions and choir concerts and, like, uh, all of that kind of stuff, that's how I would ingratiate myself. I was just like, "Oh, no, we're stuck in a bus for 3 hours. Do you want a back rub?" You know? So, physical touch is very important to, like, how I communicate with people. I am a wordsmith. Words mean a lot to me, but I just feel like touch can convey so much that words can't accurately very well.
Yeah.
And then in college, I went to I got involved in the GSA at the college. I ended up going to a conference. We always call it MumbleTAC. It's the Midwest Bisexual, Lesbian, Gay, Transgender, and Allied College Conference, MBLGTACC. And Timothy Gardner, God bless him, had a like Poly 101 of like, so here's this thing called polyamory. And it was like the heavens opened and the angels sang. It was like, oh my God, this explains. Like, I had only been able to date for like 3 weeks or so at a time previous to that. And then I always felt like I was on a really short leash because, especially being, pansexual, being attracted to people kind of regardless of gender, operating within a monogamous framework is like, I can't talk to anyone because I just naturally flirt. So it's like, oh, like my world shrinks to just my partner, and that's not healthy. Or I have to like really micromanage and filter and like second guess every interaction I'm having with someone as to whether or not they're going to think I'm flirting versus whether or not my partner is going to think I'm flirting. So it was just like, I need that to not be a thing, and maybe some monogamously oriented people have figured out how to make that work. It was like, no, I had only dated like 2 or 3 different people maybe before I found out about polyamory, and pretty much immediately read The Ethical Slut, and it resonated, and I was like, yeah, I'm here for this. It's really important to me, and has ended up being a bigger part of my identity even than being pan or queer, because it has actually rocked my life in much more significant ways as far as like marginalization, like real world consequences. I know that is a debate that is probably going to continue to keep going on. A lot of the like monogamously wired LGBT folks, and probably ENM too, there probably are some in that camp as well, that are like, no, LGBT issues are limited to that. It's not about relationship orientation. I don't see a reason for the umbrella to be that small when the same kinds of things that the LGBTQ expansive community is dealing with, that can happen for ethically non-monogamous people as well, as far as like custody of their kids and like things coming up in court around that situation, work stuff. I hence why I have to use a pseudonym for my community advocacy, education, and outreach activities, especially related to ethical non-monogamy or the kink space or anything like that, because working, especially in a right to work state, I can pretty much get fired whenever somebody on the school board hears a rumor and decides, but what about the children? We can't have someone like that having this life of their own outside of work hours. We own them. It's this whole issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, it right, and maybe if it was, and again, I'm just hypotheticals here, right? But if maybe it was more of a swinging thing where you're like, hey, this is a thing we choose to do on the weekends, I can see how that's a little bit different than this is how I relate to the world. This is who I am. This is like really a big core part of my identity.
Yeah.
That's very different, right? That's
Right.
yeah.
Right. And I know I think some people in the kink space end up dealing with this too, with like how essential it is to their self identity versus, oh, this is just a different flavor, something I enjoyed, on
Yeah.
occasion. I just like having it on my menu, but it's not
Right.
absolutely essential for me or whatever. I kind of fall in that latter category. I'm not one who is just like, I want the world to know this about me. It's not essential to me, that particular element of identity.
Right.
And I totally affirm people for who for whom it is really important for them.
For sure.
So how did it go when you started? Like you walk away from this 101 class, you've got the ethical slut in hand. How
did it go?
Yeah, how did it go?
Yeah, I don't think I was actually dating at that time, so I was able to just, start a little bit fresh with relationships moving forward. I didn't date a ton in college. I didn't have any relationships that were super serious at the time. I had a couple of girlfriends, I think maybe one boyfriend, just at various different times. My bigger things, I mean, I was definitely dealing a lot with like self-identity stuff. I was combating disordered eating, exercise bulimia. That has been a significant thing I've battled with, especially at that time in my life. It has changed a fair bit over the years, of course. I was very like overachiever, ambitious, did all the things. Like looking back at that period of my life, I do not understand how I functioned. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I just was like, I have no feelings. I don't do feelings. They're messy. They're irrational, and they're just a problem. So
It sounds similar to the one track mind of Get Out of high school. It was like mission based.
yes. Yeah, exactly. It was kind of like, I don't need a distraction on my path toward independence, autonomy, security. I was very driven in that direction. And, I was very active in my church at that time. Became part of the Open and Affirming Task Force. The church I've been engaged with, I guess we'd say for 22 years, off and on. There was a huge hiatus, but we'll go with that. It's the same congregation. It's a within the UCC denomination. And it's kind of funny. We joke that the UCC is like Unitarians considering Christ. It's like the Unitarian church, but like technically one step more. It's in the Christian wheelhouse, and I did a ton of discernment about my spirituality when I was in college. I had to take a couple of religion classes, and they really helped me kind of discern where I was at. I had been raised starting at about 11 or 12. I was baptized at like 11 or 12 in a pretty conservative Lutheran denomination. For a while, I thought it might have been like a fringe, like pseudo cult kind of situation because it was a denomination. I tried to research it and find out more about it after I had left it, and I like couldn't find anything. But apparently it's kind of within the realm of like Missouri Synod and Wisconsin Synod. Not that you need any of that background, but people within the Lutheran church will know what I'm talking about there. My pastor was a Y2K guy, so he was like, the rapture is going to happen in 2000, which would have been when I was 16. So I literally didn't think I was going to I didn't think I was going to see graduation. So it's a miracle that I liked school and cared as much about my grades as I did, because we were.
It didn't really matter at that point. Yeah.
Exactly, So anyway, and like much to my ire, like they had us, picketing against abortion for a youth group activity, like things like that. Like that actually happened. And I appreciate that my parents wanted me to have some spiritual community, and it was probably the best one available at that time with where I grew up, especially considering my dad was a lapsed Catholic and my mom had been raised in the Jehovah's Witness religion. She chose not to get baptized at 18, which is kind of their timeline on things. When you choose this path for yourself, she chose not to follow that path. And so there's like that whole side of the family is like not supposed to talk to us. And like some of them still do, even though yeah, they're really torn about it. But that's one of the biggest things in which that religion sometimes gets identified as a cult because there is some of that very insular, isolationist type. Nope.
Mhm.
Once they leave the fold, you have to write them off. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if they're your own child or,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
So religion was a big part. Sounds like a big part of your upbringing, and then came back, and for the last 20 years has been a big part of your.
Right. I'm really grateful. I didn't have a lot of that conflict of like, oh, because I'm queer, I'm going to hell. I didn't have a lot of that. Like the pastor talked about it maybe twice when I was in high school, and I knew at 14 that I didn't like just boys. There was a girl trombone player across the band room, and I was just like smitten. Um and she was older than I, so I literally never talked to her, but like that experience I was just like, "Oh, okay. I like I like girls too. Sweet." That's at that time how that manifested. And it was like not a huge source of conflict or problem for me. There was a little bit it came up a little bit at church. I was just very like, God is love. How can love be wrong? Like I knew it wasn't where I landed, and it really got me started down that path of like uh I'm not a biblical literalist, so that helped. That's what ended up shifting me. I was just like, screw Christianity when I went off to college, and one of my best like lifetime friends was like, before you totally write it off, come to church with me. Like give it a chance. And I did, and I loved the UCC congregation. They were super welcoming. I became part of the open and affirming task force when they were adopting their welcoming statement. And it was a really cool discernment process for them over time. Like, I think after college, mostly, I taught Sunday school. I chaired the social concerns board. I sang in the choir. My spouse and I, shared a position on the diaconate board. We were deacons. That was actually in place when shit hit the fan in the spring of 2019. And that church was my community. Like they were kind of my family of choice for a very long time. Right after college, I was at my third year of counseling at a church camp and met someone who was within that lover friend realm. And long story short, I got knocked up and found that out very, like, very early in my term with AmeriCorps, which I did right after college. I moved back and forth to Washington and then back to the Fargo area essentially like twice over like 3 or 4 years. And so it was a very difficult time for me. But when I came back from my first year of AmeriCorps, I walked into church with my, infant daughter at the time, like 3, 4 months old, and everyone was just like, "Oh my goodness, wow, that's a thing. Welcome," and that was wonderful. And so my daughter really grew up in that congregation for about the first 10, 12 years of her life. And then eventually, when I met and married my husband, he was very enthusiastic to be involved, especially with music and whatnot at the church as well. So I authenticity is really important to me. I don't do a great job filtering. I have to mask in my day-to-day life. I don't do it voluntarily, so I don't like having to filter out a lot. And as a result, I was always out at church. Like it's not like I needed to like announce anything to the world. It was just part of my way of being. I brought Chris with me to one of the church events, and that was like while I was married to Kurt. And the people whom I introduced Chris to, like they were very like, "Oh, okay, all right," like it wasn't a big thing. But then we got involved in what was then a meetup group It had just gotten started in the area, Lake Agassiz Polyamory Network.
And so
And
this is after your daughter was born, and this is
Yep.
is after you met your spouse? Or
yes,
before? Okay.
yes, we started attending, group meetings very early in the group's creation. So I ended up doing some leadership stuff with Lake Agassiz Polyamory Network, and after a few years, we ended up branching it into two organizations, I guess we'd call it. The Lake Agassiz Polyamory Network, as well as PolyAware, which is our more like public facing side of things, community advocacy, outreach, and education. But Lake Agassiz Polyamory Network is more for like people who identify as ethically non-monogamous, like kind of vetted members essentially. Whereas PolyAware is like, yo, you curious? Come to our event.
Mhm.
Like it doesn't matter what you identify as, like just making it more.
It's like the
Yes,
welcoming
more.
committee.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And making it a little bit more commonplace, even for people who are like, no, I know I'm monogamous, but like, what else is going on over here?
Yeah.
Um,
And
of
just for
course,
clear distinction, was separate from church. This was separate from
yes,
UCC. Okay.
yes,
Just making sure
exactly.
people caught that.
100%. And they will end up colliding
Okay.
in after a couple of years is part of the issue. So that's why I was just like, oh, let me put a pin in the church stuff for a second and back up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, we because of that engagement, especially with PolyAware, one of the local news agencies reached out to us in 2019, early 2019, and was like, "We'd like to do a lifestyle feature." And I was like, "Certainly, gladly." So I and my spouse and another partner, a couple of other people from Lake Agassiz Polyamory Network, as well as my daughter, who was like, oh, math, 12 at the time, turned 12 later that year. So she was 11. We sat down and did an interview with the local news. And so when it was going to air, like that morning, it was going to air, in the Sunday evening news. And that morning in church, I was like, there's always announcements, joys and concerns, what for the good of the order kind of thing. And I was like, hey, just FYI, if you are seeking to be a little bit more of an ally and find out about another identity of people, Kurt and I and our daughter did an interview that's going to be aired on the news tonight. And no big hubbub right that moment, because the people who had a problem with it were too gobsmacked to react.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the couple of weeks after that, I had a couple of negative experiences. Some people, especially those within the LGBTQ community, were very like, "Hey, we're with you. Like, we know there's some conflict going on right now, some discernment occurring in the congregation, but like, we're with you. You're welcome to be here. Like, we want you to feel welcome and safe here." I had one experience where, we do the passing of the peace thing and it's a very like, it ain't just you just shake hands with everyone you can reach from where you're at in your pew. Like, it's like a 5-10 minute thing of like everyone's out of their seats and giving hugs and wandering across the room. But of course, we start with whoever's closest, and I turned to shake this older white man's hand, and he looked at my hand and turned around um, to exit the pew.
Wow.
And I instantly was like, I no longer feel emotionally safe here because I don't know who's got an issue with it.
Yeah.
And like, looking back now, I've been doing a lot of work with, I'd like to be part of an intentional community one day. And so I've been doing a lot of work on like restorative justice, conflict management. How do you deal with some of these group conflict type things? And I now know I did the best I could with what I had at the time, but I wish things had gone different. Long story short, the congregation did end up doing a fair bit of discernment. They kind of reworked some of their they came up with these like covenants as far as how they seek to interact with people with whom they disagree or are uncomfortable for some reason,
Mm-hmm.
um and I think that was a good process for them to go through, but at that point, it was a them. I and Kurt were very like, "No, no. If we're gonna have people giving side eye and whispering behind our backs and sniping in true, like, Midwestern passive aggressive fashion, like,
Mm-hmm.
this isn't our safe place anymore." Like, even though at that point for like I think I 14 years sticks in my mind as far as like I've been an active member with exception to the times when I lived far away. I've done this and this and this and this and this and all of that. You find out one little thing about me and now suddenly I feel like the black sheep and I was kind of distanced by just a few members of that community. The community at large, I'm sure it was a bell curve. I'm sure 80% in the middle were just like, "Oh, okay, whatever." Like didn't care. Some people were like, "Oh, sweet, excellent." And then there were that few, mostly people who had struggled with their own kind of compulsory monogamy. Like they didn't
Yep.
realize they had options. Maybe there had been cheating in their relationships earlier in their history or things like that. Those were the people who struggled with it the most. One or two like engaged with me in some conversation. Like what exactly is this? What is this about? Here's why it sets off my spidey senses from my own baggage and my background. Like trying to kind of reconcile some of that to be able to be at a place of peaceful neutrality about it and to be able to stay welcoming and inclusive. But there were those few, very small group of people that were like, "Oh, hell no." They knew, like, even though I didn't specify the name of the congregation, it was like they felt that, when their friends saw the news, they were gonna be like, "Oh, I know what church that person's talking about."
Yeah.
Because of course I mentioned during the interview that, like, church was really important to me. I wanted to help normalize
Yeah.
polyamory and, like, we are normal people who do everything that you do, like,
Yeah.
so and in the Midwest, being church-going people, at least 10 years ago, was a big thing. COVID did a lot to shift that, but
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there was a lot of fear. What you got was a lot of the fear that people are like, well, if this type of person goes to our church, then the rest of the world is going to look at our
Yeah.
church and think, well, everybody here is doing this and I don't want to be associated. Right.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and somebody had mentioned, like, I don't want to have to defend it or, like, represent you as an ally because I'm just not comfortable with it, you know what I mean? Like, they didn't wanna
Yeah.
get associated with the topic.
Yeah.
So, I because I didn't feel safe, I stopped going, I really withdrew from the congregation. Meanwhile, they did a lot of discernment, came up with these covenants, and years later, I am starting now to reconnect, but it's been 6 years where I had a pretty big chip on my shoulder and felt really betrayed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
there's probably some degree of healing to happen there, but, like, the people who ended up really having a problem with it, they ended up leaving the church over the next 2 or 3 years, COVID and slightly after that, for different reasons, but I gathered they were a little bit church political, social kind of reasons,
Sure.
Yeah.
so it was like, well, the trash took itself out. Fine.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
now I can be comfortable there again. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm struck too, Ashton, by the fact that it sounds like through all of this, you were simultaneously living the life that you kind of described at the beginning of this interview, where your friendships were these loverships and lover friendships, and so you were sort of living your sort of authentic true self while having to fight this like as an adult, right? I feel like oftentimes when we talk to people, they're like, well, I was a kid and I knew I was queer or I felt I was queer and I couldn't talk about it because you're a kid at that point, but here you are as a fully grown adult, sort of in that almost that same space of like,
Mhm.
I'm living my life true to myself, and I'm trying to do that in church and like really fighting for it. Like that's impressive, I think.
Thank you. Yeah, it is a bit of a just part of how I'm wired as far as that whole like I'm not going to mask voluntarily. I live with authenticity. I There's no point in me engaging in a community if this fictional person who doesn't actually exist. That's not who I actually am. Kind of what's the point in being in relationship in part of a community if they really don't know you. I have the same issue with my family of origin, and I'm starting to reconnect with some of the extended branches by like introducing myself. I'm like, okay, here's the deal. You take me or leave me, and that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
Because I kind of have nothing to lose there because they
Mhm.
haven't had a strong presence in my life for the last 20 years. I ended up separating from my husband after about 10 years that we had been together because he was struggling a lot with insecurity, some anxious attachment. And for like 3 years, we did the work. We were doing couples counseling. We were doing, some marriage, like a workbook. We were talking. We were doing radar. We were, really trying to use the tools, talk about it, move things forward. And it just got to a point where it was like we just kept having the same conversations over and over again, and I felt like the Ferris wheel of things are fine, life is good, and then, things are bad. He's trying to control how much I'm out in the world and, giving me some guilt over having a life outside of our home and all of this kind of stuff. Like that, it's like the Ferris wheel started going faster and faster, and I was just like, this is no fun anymore. Like I'm out.
Mhm.
And, that of course, that's a struggle, like, that's always gonna be a difficult thing, but
Well, and it sounds like you two you were trying to explore non-monogamy together, right? Like
yes.
yeah, you both had this sort of ideal of freedom and autonomy, but I think this is true for a lot of things, specifically around relationships, is yeah, this is the ideal, this is what I want versus, oh shit, it's actually really hard to do and my stuff comes up. I get reactive or get triggered in some way. And so you can even, I think for some of us who it's like truly who we are, it's still fucking hard.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very accurate, and it's interesting because, several years af a few years after that, basically in like 2023, I ended up meeting and starting to date someone. It was a game changing relationship for me. And then I was on the other side of a lot of similar things as far as like a pretty big age gap. I made a lot less money than he did. And that was the opposite from what my marriage had been. And, some just like insecurity about my body and my weight because, I exist in this world as a fat person. And of course, that's just automatically going to have a little bit of baggage around comparing myself to my metamors.
Mhm.
And so I really struggled in that relationship, and it was so frustrating because it's like I've literally like led workshops on managing your jealousy, and yet like it's like, oh, now I'm playing the game on hard mode because I really value this relationship. Like, this is going to sound awful, especially coming from an ethically non-monogamous person, but Brian, this partner who I had started seeing in 2023, like I identify him as the love of my life at this point. Like, it was like Franklin Vo mentioned, game changer kind of relationship. That's what dating Brian was for me. Until then, I had kind of started thinking I was more relationship anarchist, and me even saying the words relationship anarchy with in my relationship, like that was a catalyst for explosion, essentially, because
With your relationship with your spouse.
yes, yep. And, he was just like, if I don't have that security of knowing I am the most important person in your life, like it just cut all of the relational security that he had. He didn't feel like ours was a secure connection anymore, and it really skyrocketed a lot of his anxiety and anxious attachment stuff. And I then ended up dealing with that anxiety and anxious attachment in my relationship with Brian, and I have a lot more compassion for Kurt at this point. Like, I still feel our relationship was not sustainable in the long term. I Yeah, we were a nice tight-knit little family for a while, and that was wonderful, but it was not the foundation wasn't strong enough. And it's that whole issue of, like, I can know cognitively that my partner says I'm important to them and my partner says I'm special, and, they say that they want our relationship to last for years, like the foreseeable future, of course, hopefully forever. But no one can read the future, and every relationship ends sooner or later, whether it's by death of one of the partners or because someone made a conscious choice. And the label cannot inherently give any actual security. Like, a marriage is the same thing. It just makes it harder to leave someone you no longer are in love with. It's like, it doesn't mean it can't make them love you still,
Yep.
Like, they can
Yeah.
sure try, but, like, no one people's feelings change, and that's what happened with Brian. He, kind of at about that 18-month mark after the, new relationship energy wore off, he felt he was dealing with a lot of mental health difficulties and had kind of gotten to a point of he felt basically gray sexual, aromantic, like, he just felt like he needed to not be in relationship with anybody at that point. And we had moved in together, we had been living together for about 6 months, and it it turned my world upside down. It was very challenging for me. I'm really proud of myself for being able to have this conversation and not start breaking down. Like, that's still been a little bit more of a recent thing,
I
because
was like,
this
it
was
wasn't that long ago.
yeah. It was just in April that I moved out, and now we're in August. So, I just moved back to my house that I owned, so it wasn't difficult from a logistical standpoint. It shattered me emotionally, and it it maybe casts into question for me, like, will I ever feel secure in a romantic relationship again? And it's like, maybe not. I don't know. Maybe I'm gonna be that awesome, sexy spinster with 2 cats and, who has this rotating door of lovers coming to visit. But okay, like, that's kind of where I'm at right now, and, like, if the right person comes along to have a more solid, steady partnership, I look forward to that. I hope to have that in my life again. But I'm really grateful that that isn't more important to me than my needs, and having it be healthy, having it be founded on mutual trust, and, thinking us each thinking the other is the smartest in the room. Like, I really want that synergy of, like, intellectual connection, of course, sexual chemistry, because physical affection is very important to me in a relationship. And, having that compatibility that is really deep and lasting, instead of just like, this one's good enough. Like, a relationship is better than no relationship. I've been really working on over the last, 6 months or whatever, like, no. Like, you're competing against me spending time with myself, and I really like doing that. Thank you. So, some people definitely come to that from, like, oh, I'm solo poly. I'm always going to be my own primary partner. Anyone else is just temporary, and I love it while we have it. I I I'm not quite there. So, like, for a while I had been saying, like, solo poly but not by choice. But like I understand that like solo poly is very like, no, this is my choice. This is my structure that works for me. So yeah.
Well, I think it's
So I'm
also fair that can change, right? That
Yeah.
what today you could be like, today I'm truly choosing solo polyamory for myself, and then in 6 months or even 3 days, you can be like, not the shoe that fits today.
Right. Well, because
Mhm.
allowing yourself space to transition from these relationships that you've been going through the last couple of years, like that's a lot on your like to be able to take time. Like I think it's smart to take time to be in that transition
Mhm.
of and to take care of yourself. And so not knowing like exactly where you're at right now or what the future is going to look like makes a lot of sense. And allowing yourself to be in that unknown, which is hard, but also important.
Yeah. Yeah. I also, my like non-relationship, just me, myself, and I kind of life has had some interesting evolutions over the last couple of years, as far as kind of figuring out that I am more more sensitive than most people as far as just like not specifically emotionally, but like my sensory profile is kind of interesting, the ADHD, some significant executive functioning challenges that end up like I don't handle stress terribly well. And so that's why I've had to leave teaching, which was my passion and like what I'm good at and where I really want to be, my calling to uh, I don't know exactly what's next. I'm starting a business, I'm writing a book, I'm working part-time and trying to keep the bills paid and of course the world's on fire. So it's like especially in the US, like I think I looked up disability in my state and like it looks like mental health like doesn't even really qualify me, technically if I wanted to go that route, which is like would change my standard of living pretty significantly and is kind of choosing a whole different set of stressors, like that whole poverty tax issue of like having to do all this paperwork constantly to like document that I still qualify and whatever. Like paperwork is the bane of my existence. It gives me so much anxiety. So it's just like it's like choosing just trading one stress for a different one,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's like I don't see a net gain. So I'm definitely doing a lot of discernment and have definitely fantasized like, nope, I'm just going to buy 40 acres and we're all just going to build tiny homes on it and like everyone else can just go fuck themselves. We're just going to be a self-sustaining, independent community and take care of each other. And I won't need income. Uh, Unfortunately, municipal laws often make that really problematic as far as like how many unrelated people can live on a property and like how many buildings you can have and all this kind of stuff. So it may not, what I really want may not be viable in this region. And a lot of places where those things do exist are too hot for me because this SSRI girly, I am a lifetime depressive. I will probably be on antidepressants for my entire life. Like I cannot be hotter than 80 degrees. I will die. So it's just like eh, um,
Yeah, so you
I'm
can't move
currently
south.
yeah, exactly. It's just like, maybe coastal, and then it's like, well, okay, cost of living is high there, so I don't know. And my parents live in the Midwest still, and as the only daughter, eldest child, I'm trying to help make sure their needs are met to the greatest degree that I can, which is much easier living within a couple hours of them than it would be being 2 time zones away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or more. I did a semester, abroad and would love to move back there to Latin America. That would be amazing. But, it's like, well, for now, well, this is where things are at and
Yeah.
trying to make the best of it and enjoy it while I'm here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm we talked you talked a little bit about family and I'm curious how it has been with your parents.
Yeah. My parents, God bless them, they do they ac they don't necessarily understand me, but they accept me. They It helps that, like, because I figured out I was polyamorous in college and wasn't, like, transitioning an existing relationship, and, like, when I met Kurt, he identified as poly. Like, we actually met at a, poly shindig. So, like, I only operate within the ethical non-monogamy framework anymore. Like, I don't really do poly Yoda, helping the little poly newbie polywogs evolve into their next self. I do that on like a community level. I won't do it as a partner. So
Mhm.
I my parents have definitely, like everything that has come up, that they were like, well, this wasn't necessarily ideal. This was not our plan for you. They acknowledge, like, well, my plan for you is technically irrelevant because your plan for you is the one that's going to end up happening, the one that you're going to be operating from, and I mean, I can make my own plans, and the universe throws curveballs all the time. So in a
Yeah.
way, it doesn't
Yeah.
even matter. But
Yeah.
they've been pretty accepting, sometimes needing to kind of ask clarification or whatever, but typically not very judgmental. Yeah, occasionally confusion is about as uncomfortable as it gets, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
we talk through things a bit. They know that this makes me happy. Like, how can you really complain when your child has several people whom they love?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
who love them, right?
exactly,
And yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
So
I'm curious on the sort of similar question, but from your perspective as a parent raising your daughter, how have you sort of communicated this and shared this with her?
right, it's always been it's always been within this framework of what's age appropriate and honest. So, you know, like, from the time she was 5, it's like, you have sleepovers with friends, I have sleepovers with friends too, kind of that thing. Like, she doesn't need to know what we're doing. It's fine. And she does meet my partners usually eventually. They kind of become part of extended family of choice or whatnot. And, she's always been like, "Oh yeah, mom's boyfriend, he's really cool." Like, she has she's gotten pretty close to at least one, and she it kinda sucks because she ended up dealing with some pushback and
Mm.
judgment and whatnot after the news story. A couple of her friends, their parents were just very unimpressed, did not want their child associating with her anymore because, they didn't want their child coming over to our house. And I'm just like, it's not, I don't, it's the same thing about, like, I don't talk about my sex life with children. Like, come on. It's not,
Yeah.
and it's not like we're sitting here making out on the couch. Like,
Yeah.
whatever. Like, they may suss out, like, oh, that other adult here is, they're maybe more than friends, but like, it's not like there's anything going on in front of kids that is inappropriate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's not like you're hooking up in the kitchen, while you're making the kids their lunchtime snack.
right, right. And it's very different from, I mean, a lot of like the swinging community where it's just like, oh no, this is just casual, it's just recreational. They're very like, oh no, because it's only part of their sex life, like they're like, our children don't know about this and they never will. And we don't
Yeah.
know. These parts of my life are siloed. That's not the case for me because they're people I care about deeply oftentimes. Sometimes not. Sometimes it is pretty casual. But if that's what works for the two of us, but like my partners whom I've been really close to, like, of course they they become kind of part of the family. So she she didn't love that. I don't think she resented us too much because she was just like, they're being stupid, that like there's nothing wrong with this. Like, she had a really good understanding of, like, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And it still
yeah.
sucks, right? That still sucks that she gets caught, like, there's collateral damage that,
Yeah.
like, it's
Yeah.
impressive to hear that she was, like, taking the stance of, "Well, no, what you're doing, the way you're loving isn't wrong. These people are being dumb in how they're responding and reacting, but it still sucks to lose your friend or to not be able to spend time with a friend because their parents say, well, you're not allowed to hang out with them because
Mhm.
of what her parents do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and of course, like, at that time, she was, like, 11, and so it's very 11, 12, and so that's already such a hellish time for kids anyway, and genetics being what they are, that's about when her mental health struggles came up too, and so it folded in a lot. It wasn't the biggest thing, but it was definitely a significant bummer at the time, a significant point of difficulty. And then, of course, like some of this, the timing is just such that it's just like, oh, yeah. And then COVID happened like
Yeah.
6 months after all of this exploded.
Yeah.
So it wasn't necessarily part of that, but it definitely, of course, everything changed at that point. But
Yeah. Yeah. It didn't help things at all. Then you could not have seen that coming.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, thank you, Ashton, for everything you shared today. It's been really wonderful to talk with you. And I'm curious if there's anything else that you wanted to get out there before we let you go today.
I guess the biggest thing is just we are in the process of resurrecting our local organizations, trying to get them established and rebuild that momentum because we actually have kind of a huge the membership for Lake Agassiz Polyamory Network. There were like 200 of us, not that like everyone was coming to everything all the time, but it was just like as far as the membership roster, whatever. And
Yeah.
that doesn't include all the poly people in the world who are like, we're good. We don't need help. I don't feel like helping anybody else. I don't have room on my schedule for a community organization. You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
Polyamory can be really challenging from that social perspective when it's just like there's no space on my calendar for community. My community is my little constellation and we're good. So I see it as just one of those kind of community building things of I want there to be more resources, more community, more local things that people can get involved in to feel like they're not alone and to
Mhm.
bounce ideas off of and to troubleshoot and to vent and to celebrate. The so our local organizations, here in the Red River Valley area are in the process of getting re re-upped and whatnot. And if anyone wants to like get involved with that, if you happen to be local, we might know each other, but maybe not. They can email me at polly.ashton@gmail.com, which I'm sure you could throw in the show notes if you like.
It'll be
Yes.
there.
And the like landing page for access to those local organizations would be probably PolyAware's Facebook page. Once we get things reinvigorated, we probably will do, maybe Blue Sky, probably some Instagram, TikTok situation. I don't know how that cross posting works because, like I said, I'm 40. I have to like relearn all of this, how the technology all talks to each other, and so some of that might not necessarily be my area. I would love to have
Yeah.
people wanting to add more content and help operate that group because there definitely are there is a need for it. I was just looking on Reddit today, like, somebody was asking if there's a thing, and I finally responded 8 months later. But I finally joined r/Fargo. And so that will definitely be more of a community thing, I would say, here within the next year. And if it's only on my shoulders, it's who knows when it's gonna happen. Because, like I said, I'm writing a book and,
Mhm.
dealing with my own neurospicy brain and,
Yeah.
owning a home and so yeah, there are a lot of plates spinning for me, and if that ends up being just on me, that plate is probably gonna drop a few times. So,
Yeah.
I'm definitely glad to I need to reach out and kinda get the band back together as far as, see who was in leadership and wants to resume that.
Yeah.
Because COVID killed our groups locally, and, we didn't do a great job transitioning because everyone was focused a little bit more on how does my job work now that we're in
Mhm.
lockdown and how to, so it
Yeah.
that ball got dropped and then we just never picked it back up. So,
Yeah.
but there's a need and we are I would like to start meeting that need again.
Perfect. I love that. And I think it's just important. I think anytime we can get community together like that, and I think especially in the rural areas that you're talking about, in these fairly conservative areas, the the assumption that, well, there's none of that here is so wrong, right? And we've talked to people all
Oh yeah.
over this country and all over the world where it's like we're in these deeply conservative parts of the country, and we know there's other people because we see them, we run into them, we can tell, but we're so isolated and we're so separated. And so being able, I mean, and it's hard work, right? Because you're organizing in an area that people aren't going to love it, right? You're going to have to find very specific places that you can meet up and businesses that are willing to be okay with it and support it. So it's not like here in San Francisco where, every other building is probably owned by a queer person, and you can be like, oh, I know that's maybe a bit of an exaggeration, but the access to resources is so much more abundant. And so give you a lot of credit for doing that work. It's not easy work to do
Thank you.
in the easy places. And
Right.
so doing it in the
Yeah.
challenging
Yeah,
places
for sure.
is so much harder. So
For
thank
sure.
you for doing that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And thank you for putting yourself out there.
Yeah. And thank you for being here today
Thank
with
you.
us. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys for what you do. I really appreciate especially normalizing non-monogamy just from that perspective of literally making it not a weird thing. Like even it doesn't have to be for everybody. That's fine. I just want people, the general public, to know monogamy is optional. With some of my older students, I had this issue come up of like they were dating and dealing with, the love triangles that happen. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm going to clue you in about a thing that you can go look up on your own later. But like, if you don't want to be with just one person, you don't have to, but everyone has to agree to the rules of the game before you start playing the game.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you have to be upfront about that on the front end instead of, breaking people's hearts and trying to make sure people don't find out about everything because everyone finds out about everything because drama and because social media and, it's just that's their reality. So it's like helping it become a little bit more of a choose your own adventure. Like you have different paths, you have choices, you have options.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. Well, thank you again, Ashton, for the work you do, for being here, and for sharing your story with us today.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I'm sure I will. It's summer and it's beautiful and I'm enjoying soaking up the last of it, especially since this year I don't have the looming school
Right?
year is starting
Right?
next week vibe. I'm like my teacher friends are like, "Ugh," the dialectical thinking of like
Right.
loving the now and looking forward to school coming back and dreading school starting again. Like all of that reality. I'm just like sitting back here drinking my coffee and
Drive,
saying, "God,
drive
please
around the
no."
school a little bit just to get a feel for like, hey, that's not my problem this year.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
not my zoo, not my zebras. Have fun,
That's right.
guys. Good luck.
Yeah,
I'll try
I
right.
to,
love it.
work on fixing the system from afar so your lives can be a little bit easier, but it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, enjoy the rest of your summer and then your fall and then your winter because you get to. So thank you again for being here.
Yes, thank you guys so much.
And we're back. Thank you so much, Ashton, again for reaching out to us and for coming on and sharing your story. It was absolutely wonderful to talk with you, and we're excited to get this out there.
Yes, thank you from my side as well. It was wonderful chatting and sharing your story, and also just really grateful for the work you do in community organizing. A reminder to everybody, links to everything that Ashton talked about are in the podcast show notes over on our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com. Click on the podcast tab.
We wanted to tell all of you about a couple of upcoming dates here here in the outro. The first is our next monthly workshop for our community. That is November 13th. It's going to be on how to choose a pleasure-based life with Crystal Baldwin. You can find out more information on the workshop tab of our website. And then we also have a virtual speed friending coming back November 21st, 2025. You can sign up on the banner at the top of our page on our website or under events. And again, for the virtual speed friending events, anyone is welcome. You just must be open-minded and respectful. And finally,
yeah, we have a huge announcement. Our next in-person event is called Relationship Recess. And we told you all about it in the intro, but in case you skipped that, it's coming up May 1st to the 3rd, 2026, just outside Orlando, Florida. You can find a short launch video linked in the show notes below or on our website under the Relationship Recess tab. And you can also go back to the announcement that came out on Monday, right here in this podcast feed, and you can listen to the audio from that announcement as well.
get your tickets now. Prices increase January 1st.
We would love to see you there. Come and join us.
And with that, next week, we have another interview, this time with Matt. You're going to want to come back in a week and listen.
We'll see you then.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.